Hey there, welcome to Go Far Girl. Today I'm here with Audra. You might know her as the Nerd Traveler. She's deeply passionate about the intersection of history and travel and believes that every trip has the potential to become a journey of discovery. Whether she's standing outside the Roman Colosseum or wandering on the halls of the Louvre, Audra seeks out UNESCO World Heritage Sites that make the past feel tangible and alive. So today, she's going to help us understand why these places matter, how they can change the way we experience the world. So, welcome, Audra. I'm so happy to have you.
I'm so excited to be with you. Thank you so much.
Yes, I'm so excited about this topic because I love discovering UNESCO sites.
Mhm.
And I love the way it brings, like you said, history to life. And it makes the places you visit so much more meaningful. I've
Mhm.
had so many experiences in these places where I'm like, oh, it's really cool. And then once I learn the history, I'm like, oh my gosh. And you just feel something for it. And I've cried and I've had like these just crazy experiences with that. So I'm super excited that you also love to nerd out on history. Um, so for
Completely.
for those that don't know, can you kind of tell us like what a UNESCO site is and what makes it qualify to be a UNESCO site? It's not just any old place, right?
It's not just any old place, correct. So, and I'm one of those people, I like to know what acronyms stand for. And I actually looked it up. So, UNESCO stands for United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. And it actually has an interesting origin story. There was some work that Egypt wanted to do that would have they wanted to put up a dam in the 50s, and it would have flooded an area that had a lot of historic relics, all of these different things from like a cultural perspective that were important not only to Egypt and Egyptian history, but biblical history, cultural history, that whole, that what do they call it, the Delta, the Nile Delta, um, and so there was this effort to preserve these sites, and that kind of kicked off this kind of global desire to really classify those sites that should be preserved. So they went through different iterations of researching and discussing and treaties and international diplomatic relations, and actually established the list in 1972. So it's not very old. And I say that because I was born in 1972 and I'm not very old either.
That is not old at
But
all.
it's not old at all. But it really focuses on things that have kind of a universal cultural relevance to the world. And it actually increases having something designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site actually kind of, it not only shines a spotlight on the location, but it also increases protection of it, preservation of the site. So it actually has some kind of financial implications as well. So there is a little bit of funding that comes from the UNESCO organization to the site, to the country to help preserve that location. And there's three different types of UNESCO World Heritage Sites. There's cultural, there's natural, and then there's a hybrid. So it can be both. So if you think even the United States, we've got cultural UNESCO World Heritage Sites like the Statue of Liberty, Independence Hall, the missions down here in San Antonio, Texas. I'm in Austin, so San Antonio is an hour or so south of me. But you also have natural. You also have those that are designated natural sites like the Grand Canyon, Yosemite National Park, the redwood forests in Northern California. So that's just the United States. The United States actually has, I think, 26 UNESCO World Heritage Sites, but Italy has the most at 60.
And there's
So
over 200, right? Is there over?
there's
Is
over
it?
200. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So, anyway, so I just, I obviously, because I'm a nerd, I did my research on UNESCO for this podcast.
No, I love that because I actually didn't know what it stood for. Like I knew
Mm-hmm,
like generally what it was just based off the things I've seen. I was like, oh,
mm-hmm,
clearly the Colosseum's historical. Clearly this cave in Slovenia is like educational. Like so I kind of had the gist, but I didn't know And I didn't know the history of
Mhm,
that, which is another fun
mhm,
fact.
mhm,
So cool.
mhm.
So have you always been into
Exactly.
history, or did travel get you into history?
I think travel got me into history. History was always one of my favorite classes, like in high school. Like I actually my favorite classes were social studies with our little map pencils where you would color in the
Me
map
too.
and look at all the yeah. So I loved my map pencil. So I think it started with social studies, but history's always kind of been it was always one of my favorite classes. Unfortunately, in high school, it was almost always the class right after lunch. So it was always the class that I was kind of dozing off in. Apologies to my teachers. But anyway, after those delicious high school lunches, how can one stay awake? But no, it really, and you and I kind of talked about this a little bit. When it really struck me was I did a study abroad program my senior year of college. I was so lucky to go to a school that really promoted study abroad. So they had a program called Jan Term. So for the month of January, you took one class. And sometimes it was off campus, sometimes it was international. So my senior year of college, I did a Jan Term in Switzerland. And a group of us went to Paris for a weekend. And I remember standing outside of Notre Dame and seeing that plaque that says construction started in 1163. And it was really the first time it hit me, not only, just how young America is. Like, we don't have anything here from the 12th century, nothing,
Which they'll
or
remind you
if we,
of all the time when you go to Europe. They're like, this is
exactly.
old.
Exactly. You are not. So, but yeah, and even, and so that was really the thing that just really kind of struck me. And like as I just stood there, I just had a moment where I thought of all the people that have stood where I'm standing over 800 years, because that was 1994. So I mean, it was over 800 years. And I was just like, holy crap. And just thinking like and so that was when kind of the history all came flooding back that I was like, when this was when construction started on this, like there wasn't a printing press. People didn't know how to read. People didn't have books, and so all of that history just kind of started clicking into place, and it just felt really kind of, I don't know, it shifted my thought process in a way that that was what started my journey.
That's so
That's
cool.
what started my journey. Yeah.
Yeah, I love those moments. I had so many of those when we were in Turkey, especially
Mm-hmm.
because it's so old and it's been through so many different, I mean, it's Turkey itself has been so many different things, right? And such a major part of so many different stories. And we were walking along this road, and it's like one of the original roads from like when like the Romans had it. And then you're like walking to where like they brought the um you're walking along to where they brought in the people that were going to be used as gladiators, and where they like sold them basically and auctioned them off. And you just think about the feelings of the people there, and they walked from here to here, and it's not a replica. Like, it's this brick like that they actually walked on, and these things, and it's mind-blowing. And I always think
Mm-hmm.
about the people. I'm like, oh, the people that walked here, or like, oh, the people that lost their lives like right here, or like Anne Boleyn was like beheaded right here. Like, that stuff is just
Exactly.
crazy to me. That
Exactly.
Yeah, so I love that. So that was kind of your first intro. Do you make a point
Mm-hmm.
now of traveling like specifically to certain UNESCO sites, or is it more just like a bonus if you're traveling and there is one?
Well, for a long time, it was a bonus if I was traveling and there is one. But now I kind of seek them out. And it's really interesting. I went to um, Lyon and Marseille last year in France for some Olympic Games. We got tickets to some Olympic Games that were not in Paris. And I didn't Marseille is one of the oldest cities, and it's one of the oldest continually inhabited cities in the world. And they have a UNESCO World Heritage Site that is from an architect, but this architect also has, it's more like his work that's an architectural site. So it was really exciting for us to try to go see that. We actually ended up having a travel fail with that experience because we were on a bus and we didn't realize that we were on an express bus to the coast. So like we were ready to get off on the next stop, and the next stop wasn't for another 30 minutes. So we totally passed it by. It was our
Well, it's
last
a
day of our
tour.
stay, and we were like, well, whatever. But you know, it's so I've gotten to the point now where I seek them out, and actually the UNESCO website has an interactive map that you can look at to kind of see. But it's for me, it's kind of challenging because it doesn't have, and I understand why they do this. It doesn't have the borders, so it's hard to know if you're looking at a map. You're like, is that Spain or is that France? Because I'm used to seeing the lines on the map to help me differentiate. Is that Portugal or is that Spain? Is that, trying to figure out, where exactly something is. So thankfully, they have one that you can download into a spreadsheet that I have downloaded into a spreadsheet, and I have it filtered and I have it sorted and I have it highlighted.
I love this so much.
So
I'm such a
you can,
highlighter list kind of girl. I'm like, check it off. Check it off.
exactly. So yeah, so I've got a list and I've highlighted the ones I've been to, and then like the next ones I want to go to. But it's hard because for me, at least, I'm realizing that I have been places that are UNESCO World Heritage Sites, and now I really want to go back to them. So it's kind of that. It's always kind of that dilemma. It can be that dilemma that travelers have, which is, do you go someplace new, or do you revisit a place that you've already been before?
Right.
So it's like, well, but what if I was in Paris only for a few days and then I went to a new place? Can I do both?
Are you
So
in my head?
exactly. So yes, I think we all share one of those big dorky traveler brains.
I know we're fundamentally all the same, which is why I love it so much.
Exactly.
So do you think that people would get the most out of their trip to a UNESCO site by learning the history, researching ahead? Or do you think there's enough information like at the sites themselves to sort of get that feel? Like what would you recommend as someone who like really loves it?
Well, as someone who really loves it, it's kind of interesting because and let me answer the question. I personally think it would be better to do a little bit of research beforehand, because there are UNESCO World Heritage Sites like in Paris, it's the banks of the Seine. So there isn't like a place that is the designated site with a plaque with information on it.
Gotcha.
So, or like the historic center uh, of like Vienna or Florence. So, I mean, it's more like the area is deemed a UNESCO World Heritage Site versus the building. So, I think that it does help to do a little bit of research beforehand. They do have a lot of really interesting information on the UNESCO World Heritage Site page. It talks about there's 10 different criteria that a site has to only meet one of the criterion, but there's a list of 10. And so if you go and look, you can see which of the criteria a site met in order to be designated. And then you can also see too on there the tentative list, which is these are things because they vote annually they add to UNESCO World Heritage Sites every year.
That's what I was just going to
They
ask if
do,
they were still adding.
yeah,
Yeah.
they add to it every year. And obviously, of course, it does tend to get a little political. Like there's lobbying going on, and because of all of the protection and funding that come with having something designated a UNESCO Heritage Site. And I kind of feel like there's a little bit of like a race, because like we were talking about, like Italy has the most at 60. China's right behind it at 59. So I'm sure China's like, if we can just get two more, then we'll be
Yeah.
number one. And Germany's coming in at 54. So they're like, if we could get seven more, So I think that there's probably a little bit of competition involved, but they do add to it. If something is starting to, there are a couple of sites that they're worried that could be delisted because they're not being preserved well enough. The efforts are not being made by the country to preserve the site. So they could be delisted. So they do delist some, but they do add to it every year.
That's sad though, because you think they were put on there for a reason. So there must be something
Mhm.
really special about them. So just to see them like go away is sad as well.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But the thing that I love about UNESCO World Heritage Sites is that, and we kind of touched on this a little bit. It's like you get to be a time traveler, and it's just like you imagine what was it like? I had a moment like you were talking about in Ephesus where, we were walking and it was like, this was the letter to the Ephesians in the Bible. Like, this is
Yes.
Ephesus. This is where Antony and Cleopatra walked. This is where Paul walked. Like these, same thing. Like these stairs, this pathway. Same thing in Corinth. We did a trip to. We did a trip through Greece and then we did a cruise and ended up in Ephesus, but kind of the same thing in Corinth. Like people were like, do you want to go to Corinth? There's not that much to see in Corinth, but you're like, it's still the letter to the Corinthians. Like, holy
Yes.
crap.
I
Holy
know.
crap.
Yeah.
It
Ephesus is
just,
crazy. Like,
Ephesus is crazy.
yeah. Like, I
Yeah.
still
And
think
then you
about
have to
it.
deal with
Like,
all the tea merchants and bracelet people at the end of it. And you're
I
like,
know.
thanks for ruining my,
Then you're like,
thanks for
yes.
ruining
Oh,
my,
we're back. And we're
yeah,
back.
exactly. Exactly. And we're back. We're back. And we're back in the 21st century. Yay. But no, I mean, Ephesus just, blew my mind.
Yeah.
Just totally blew my mind.
Yeah. No, I'm so glad you said that because I just kept saying, "Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh."
Yeah.
And it's not like I
Yeah.
said, it's not a
Well,
replica.
and
It's like the real thing. Like
yeah,
and it's
these are
still
the
like
actual
there.
bricks that Antony
Yeah.
and Cleopatra walked on right here,
Yeah.
somewhere. And even too, like we had a really cool tour guide that was actually explaining to us like how far that Ephesus usually actually had been more of the entryway to the harbor, and that over the years
Right.
the water had retreated back. And I was like, oh wow, like, and it's kind of one of those things you're like, the climate's always been changing, like the ice age to the retreating waters to all of it. You're
Well,
like, yeah,
yeah, and they were saying that group of people had moved quite a few times because the water moved, and that's how they
mhm,
were trading and getting things in, and so that site, had literally taken up more space because they had to keep moving with the water, and you don't think about things like that just in your day to day
mhm,
life, but then you
yeah,
wonder like where we'll be in 800
yeah,
years, right? What this area will
exactly.
look like, and yeah,
Exactly. Because at one point, the desert had trees,
yeah. Yeah.
you know?
We were just up in Canada, in
Mhm.
Banff and Jasper, and we were at one of the glaciers and you could see where, it used to be and now how much smaller it is now. But then we went just a couple miles up the road and we were looking at like fossils that had been underwater, like they were like sea snails, like in the middle of Canada, like in
Yeah,
Alberta, not on the coast, not in Vancouver. I was like,
yeah,
oh, and you could just see them. Like they didn't make it up. They're right there. And you're
right.
thinking, oh my gosh,
Exactly.
this is just wild.
I know. I know. I mean, the earth is so, and that's the thing to me is just it just reminds me how fascinating and dynamic and ever changing, our earth is. And it just, yeah, that's the stuff that and I think too, it kind of, things like that, seeing things like that also kind of really, they, for me at least, they find a way to really humble me. Like, oh, I think my problems are all big and important, but this used to be underwater.
Yeah. Like nothing's permanent. Nothing
Nothing's
really
permanent.
matters. Yeah. Like,
Yeah. And I'm really infinitesimal. So,
exactly. But I was also thinking when
it,
you were talking about us coloring our maps, like in high school,
mm,
like the maps we learned aren't even real. Right?
mm-mm.
Like the countries are different.
Yeah.
And when we went
Yeah.
to Slovenia, I was like, well, this was never on my map. Like, because all of those countries
Exactly.
have changed and borders have changed
Yeah.
and countries have split and done all these things. So even that's not like real. Like you just are
Exactly.
like you have to continually and then they keep adding to your list so you're never going to be finished. That's just like the ultimate like
I
goal, but
know.
you're never going to check them all off because
I
it's like
know.
laundry, right? There's just going to be more the next day.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, it's like dust. It's like dust particles. It's like, well, good luck dusting. You're never going to get it all.
Oh my gosh. So we talked about Notre Dame, we talked about Ephesus. what are some other of your like favorite, like, oh my gosh, this is the best site? What have been your
Well,
favorites?
I will say this. So I'm a native Texan, so born and raised here. And I remember going to the San Antonio missions, and there's actually five of them. The most famous one is the Alamo, but there's actually four other ones that are far more gorgeous. But realizing, because I was in San Antonio not that long ago, and the city had just celebrated its 300th birthday, and kind of just being like, San Antonio is older than America.
Yeah.
Like, that's bananas. So just like, and I know that Texas used to be part of Mexico and all of that, but just realizing, so I found that to be incredibly fascinating. It was on a manhole cover that was like, the tricentennial. And I was like, oh, wow, that's really cool. But even there's certain places, and my top two are probably Florence and the Grand Canyon, where I can just go and look for hours. I could stay in and look at the Grand Canyon from sun up to sundown. I find it to be, again, talk about like the what water does over time. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, holy crap, that place just the majesty and the beauty of the Grand Canyon. I mean, every time I go, I cry just because it
Well, and it's never going to
just
be the
takes my
same
breath away.
because the light is
It's
going to hit it
never going to
different. The
be the same.
shadows, like, it's never going to look the exact same
It's
again.
never
So
going
you
to look
can,
the exact same.
yeah.
Exactly.
Well, I love
Exactly.
that you
Exactly.
chose, I was gonna say, I love that you chose the Grand Canyon of Florence because could they be more different? Like, it's not like,
Right.
oh yeah, I'm a nature girly. Of course, I'm going to choose this. Like, Florence has nothing in common with the Grand Canyon. So I love that those two are your favorite because they're so,
Yeah.
but they're both, like you said, just so incredible. The beauty. I mean,
Right.
Florence
Right.
is just
And the
magic.
mystery, like the dome on Il Duomo, it took them forever to figure out how that was built. Like, I still don't think they totally understand how it was built. It's kind of like I read something the other day about the Pantheon in Rome and how the construction materials, every time it rains, the Pantheon ends up healing itself because of the construction materials that the Romans used. And and it's just stuff like that that just blows my mind. But yeah, the dome at Il Duomo. But I could stand there and look. The Il Duomo captivates me. It just captivates me. That red and green marble, all those statues, the bell tower, the church, the dome, all of it. I mean, the baptistry, the doors on the baptistry. I mean, I could just stand. I mean, like I said, it's one of those places I could just stand all day
It's also one of
and
those places
just
that you can take photos of all day long, but then when you get home, you're like, this doesn't cut it. Like, even if it's a
no.
great photo, it's not the
Yes,
same. You
it's not
don't
the
get
same.
that feeling from a photo. And
Yeah,
that's why I think people have got to travel. Like, you
yeah.
can read about it, you can see it on YouTube, you can see like
Mhm,
10,000 of Audra's photos, but until you stand right there, it's
mhm.
just not the same. You
It's not the same.
There's nothing you
Yeah,
can do about it. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. I mean, there's the detail that never gets captured in the photos that just, yeah, it's really mind blowing. But yeah, I guess it is. It's kind of funny. I didn't even think about that. But yeah, when you asked me when we were, yeah, I was like, those are my two favorite
Yeah, no,
places.
I love that because you could have said like, I don't know, two things that are so very similar, but those were
Right.
just great and I love that.
Yeah.
So, we talked about this. So Italy has the most, which isn't really
Mhm,
surprising since it's very
mhm,
historical area. And then
mhm,
what did you say
mhm.
was next? China?
China
Okay.
with 59, just one away,
Do you
just
know how
one
many the
away.
US has?
26.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. It's not as old. So there's
Right.
less probably history and more like geographical kind of stuff. Is that
Mhm. Yeah, I think so. I think there's a cave, I think in Kentucky that's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And then there's something like kind of in New Mexico, kind of those old indigenous dwellings,
Ooh, okay.
kind of by Pueblo and Taos, that are UNESCO World Heritage Sites too. But like I said, there's a lot of lobbying that goes on behind the scenes. But it's interesting. What I found to be so interesting is UNESCO headquarters are actually in Paris. So I find it funny that Francis is the one that has the most. You would
Yeah.
feel like there's like a home field advantage of some sort.
They should be just grabbing everything they can.
The Eiffel Tower's one, and then the Louvre, and then the Orsay. And
like, you get a plaque. You get a plaque. You get a plaque.
You're designated. You're designated. Yeah. All of it.
And they're like, oh, none for America. Go away.
Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, no, it's, I mean, but if you also think too about the size of the United States as it compares to a place like Italy, I mean, we're also like probably 7 or 8 times the size of Italy.
Right.
So we've got a lot more land to cover as well.
Yeah, that's true too.
So I think there's even a couple in Alaska.
Is there?
FYI.
See, I know I should look before I go. Not that I'll have any service once I'm there, but
or time. There's something else for you to do before you leave for Alaska.
So for those who are just listening, I just was telling Audra, I'm going to Alaska tomorrow, and I've just found out I'll be on a secluded island with no humans and no cell phone and no TV and no radio and no anything. So if you never see me again, it's been great. And if I come back, I'll get to a podcast
and a bunch of bears.
Wait, I was thinking about that though. Can bears get on an island? Like, but how long was it an island? Maybe it wasn't always an island. So maybe, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, if the water was frozen 4 months ago, they might have just walked right over.
Oh my gosh.
Now, is the girl that's helping you go to Alaska, is she going to be there with you? Because you need a little collateral.
In her own cabin. Okay, so
well, as long I just as she's there.
As long as I can run faster than her, I should be okay.
Or climb.
I'm going to hop in a kayak and just, I don't know, go to Russia or something. Who knows?
Exactly. Oh, bless. That's too funny.
So back to UNESCO. That's funny. I will look them up, though, and see if there's any by where we're going. Maybe my island is a UNESCO site. Who knows?
Maybe.
So are there some lesser known sites? Like, I think some of the common ones we all know, right? What's kind of been the most surprising, or like the banks of the Seine? I didn't know that was UNESCO. That's interesting to me. Do you know why that's a site?
Because the island, the 2 islands that like where Notre Dame is, there's the Ile de la Cité, and there's another island, I can't think of what it's called, but that's actually where the Celtic Parisi tribe set up. Paris was actually founded on those islands because they were defensive. I mean, it provided the river provided a natural barrier. And actually, the left and the right bank were very uninhabitable. I think one of them was like super marshy, and they couldn't grow anything. It wasn't easy to get around. So, I think I think what's interesting for me, and as I started to learn more about UNESCO World Heritage Sites, is that it isn't always a building; it's more of an area. And to me, that's what I think is so fascinating. But honestly, I was surprised at how many America had. That Independence Hall and the Statue of Liberty were there, as well as, like I said, Yellowstone, Yosemite, Grand Canyon, the Redwoods.
So you can have more than one designation, because those are U.S. national parks, but then they're also UNESCO sites. So they're being protected from a couple of different angles, which is good. And I think that kind of speaks to their importance too.
Exactly.
That there's a lot of people looking out for them, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's how when we were in Slovenia, I think it was also one of the caves that we went into was UNESCO. And it bordered the national park, but I'm trying to remember if it was actually in it. But that was kind of one of the first things too, where I guess in my head, I was thinking buildings until we were there. And I was like, oh, cave. That's interesting. So then I was like, it must be like more multifaceted more than just like
Mm-hmm.
something happened right here. But yeah,
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And for the other thing too, is that I always kind of, in my mind, put together that UNESCO World Heritage Sites were also like wonders of the world, and they don't always line up. I mean, that was just something in my head that was connected, but that actually are not connected.
interesting. Are
There's a
some
little
of the
bit of
one
overlap.
I was going to say are yeah, so there is some
Mhm.
overlap.
Mhm,
Are,
mhm. I know that the medieval city of Rhodes is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and one of the ancient wonders of the world was the harbor at Rhodes. That's the one that had, and according to history at least, that big statue that people would like sail under. Had like a big statue guarding the harbor, and boats would sail in between the legs of the man on the statue.
Interesting. And then the Great Barrier Reef is UNESCO, right?
Hmm.
In Australia.
Hmm.
Okay.
Hmm.
Huh.
Yeah.
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 So many
I think,
places I need to go.
for me, yeah, I thought it was surprising, like you said, that there were natural, like parks and habitations that were UNESCO. I always thought that it would be something of just historic and cultural value, but it's not. It's one of those things where it's just like it has an outstanding universal value to humanity, and that the story of us are told through these sites, and that's how they're designated. But it's also, you know, like the redwoods, like Grand Canyon, it's indicative of the land, not just what man created.
Yeah, which is awesome. So
Yeah.
interesting. So, how can we travel like meaningfully to these places and not take away from them, right? Like we don't want to over tourism places, right? We don't want to like run
Right.
them over. I know like so
Right.
people ask me about national parks. I'm like, well, you stay on the trail, you bring in what
Mm,
bring out what you take in.
right.
What would you say is like the etiquette for these types of places too? I mean, obviously we're not just going to go climbing on things and spray painting our
Right.
names on boulders or
Right.
anything, but have you noticed people like being more respectful in those areas, or do you think that over tourism is contributing to their like demise?
Well, I mean, part of me wants to say yes, but I feel like that there's such a connection to certain places. Like I remember, watching like when Notre Dame caught on fire. Like people all over the world were impacted by that, and I know I was following it on the news. I know a lot of people were devastated. The fire made it look like it wasn't going to be able to be rebuilt.
Mm-hmm.
And for anybody who's been like, thinking about all that stained glass and like, God, did that stained glass survive it? Did that get blown out? What are they going to do? And so I just feel like that there is not necessarily a reverence, but I do think that there's something universal about UNESCO World Heritage Sites that people recognize, or that not, I mean, I think a lot of people recognize their relevance and their impact. I think that for any time, especially if you're going to like a church that is a part of a UNESCO World Heritage Site, to realize that, it is a place of worship. To make sure that you're dressed appropriately. You don't have bare shoulders. You don't have bare legs. Some places are going to want you to, wear a headscarf if you're a woman.
Mm-hmm.
To be quiet, to be respectful, because 9 times out of 10, if you go into a church as a tourist, there's going to be at least a few worshipers in there, and
Mm-hmm.
to just make sure that you're not interrupting, um, their their worship and their moment that they're trying to have.
Yeah, I think that's important.
Yeah.
We had to carry scarves when we went to Istanbul to go into the mosques
Hmm.
and things like that.
Hmm.
But I saw some people in Greece going into some of the churches, and I thought, oh, that's an interesting choice to like, you
Yeah.
know. So I think that that's good that
That's a
you brought that up.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, just being respectful that, especially, as travelers, just being respectful of just, other people's cultures. Like you said, wearing a headscarf. And if you don't want to wear a headscarf, don't try to go to a mosque. Like, don't try
exactly.
to impose your will upon a foreign nation's traditions and customs. And kind of the same, I kind of felt like the same thing. It wasn't a mosque, but we went to Alhambra in Grenada, and it felt very holy and reverent, and it was the first time that I realized it. And I'm sure you got to see this too when you were at the mosque, is that in Islam they don't have any depictions of the Prophet Muhammad or Allah.
Mm-hmm.
It's all and that in the Muslim faith they see the divine in nature and in geometry, which is why there's so many designs, so many geometric designs. To them, that is holy. To them, that is divine. And I didn't. I remember kind of hearing that, but it wasn't until I went to Alhambra that I was like, "There's nothing in here that is indicative of the Prophet Muhammad or Allah," and just kind of, you know,
Because
just
they're not supposed to
remembering that
worship
people,
the image. Yeah, they're not supposed to worship
right,
the image of
right,
anything. Yeah.
yeah,
I thought
and
it
to
was
just
interesting.
remember that, yeah,
Yeah. I thought it was interesting in Istanbul, in a couple of the mosques, they used to be Christian churches and now
mm-hmm,
they're Muslim mosques, but they don't take anything down or destroy the original history that was there. There was in one of the mosques, I think Sophia Hajia, maybe, I may be wrong,
mm-hmm,
but there was a picture of Christ and Mary up on the thing, and
mm-hmm,
they just put a curtain over the top of it because it was
mm-hmm,
facing Mecca, and so they couldn't
mm,
pray with it there, but they didn't want to
right,
like destroy it or cover it up or ruin it, so they just hung a curtain over it. And I thought that was really cool too, to see like the progression, like that this church had held so many different roles for so many different
mm-hmm,
people, and rather than just like gutting it and tearing it down and starting over, they were kind of still honoring that without like
mm-hmm.
taking over what they believe. And I thought that was really beautiful. Um, and
Right. Well, and it's interesting too because Jesus and Mary are actually mentioned in the Quran, and so I think that from what I understand, Muhammad actually was a very big, he thought, he was a very big fan of Jesus. He thought, the things that Jesus preached was in alignment with his thoughts to, or his beliefs as well. So there's actually, I've never read the Quran, but apparently there's quite a bit about Mary and Jesus in the Quran. So I think it's really interesting that they still do have those, uh, the iconography of the Christian faith
yeah,
in a
and I think
mosque.
it just goes to show that like once you learn about other people, how they feel
Mm-hmm.
or think, you realize you're a little more connected than you're led on to believe, right?
Right.
Like, and I think that's another thing about traveling. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
had never really given a lot of thought to the Muslim faith. Like, I mean, I knew it
Mm-hmm.
existed, right? I knew basically, some, the conservatism from women and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're in these places surrounded by it and you're like touching it and feeling it and just really taking it in, it just takes on a totally different feel, and you want to learn more about it,
Mm-hmm.
and then you understand kind of where some things come from, and how you're not that different, which I love
Exactly. And that's the
because
thing too that I love about history is that we share it. I mean, we share it, and I feel like that nobody needs a better reminder of how connected the world is than COVID.
right.
That showed us how connected we all are with how fast that, with how quickly COVID spread.
Yeah.
Like
And how we're all in it
we're not an
together,
island.
right? Yeah,
Mhm.
like everyone was kind of miserable at the same time.
Exactly. The collective misery. And then the collective relief once the vaccine started rolling out and everything started opening back up. I mean, it was this huge global collective experience that I think we're still probably processing.
Yeah.
I mean, I see old pictures, and when we were traveling and having to wear masks, even like, 3 years ago in 2022, and just being like, oh God, or at the end of 2021, and just still having to wear masks on airplanes, and but just I was cleaning out a drawer the other day and I found a bunch of old masks, and I was like, oh God, I had forgotten how these were everywhere.
Just part of your life. And then
Just part of your
thankfully,
life.
I did miss like having space between me and other humans. Like in the grocery store line, people would stay away from you. That was delightful.
Mhm.
When they
Yeah.
weren't booking the middle seats on planes, we should bring that
Yeah.
back. All the good things, but
Exactly. 6 feet of separation. Stay away from
yeah,
me. This
please,
is my hula
please.
hoop. Stay out of my hula hoop.
Exactly. You want 10 feet? Great. Take 10. I don't care. Just go away.
Exactly. Exactly.
So,
That's
do you have a
hysterical.
UNESCO bucket list? What's on your,
You know,
like,
yes, of course, always. I really want to. I really want to go. A little bit further east. Like I did a Christmas Market River cruise in December of 2023. So kind of doing like Germany, Budapest, Austria, kind of those Eastern countries really kind of piqued my interest. So Albania, Croatia. Croatia's got a ton of UNESCO World Heritage Sites. So I think that kind of the Balkans, that whole, what was it, the former Czechoslovakia and
mm-hmm.
Yugoslavia, visiting those places, like we were talking about the places that don't exist anymore. But
Yeah.
honestly, one place that I really, 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 really want to go is Mongolia. I have a bizarre
Really?
fascination with Genghis Khan.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a
Well,
very
there's some
bizarre fascination.
history.
Yeah. I mean, that was the largest, they've never replicated the amount of land, not even the Romans conquered more land than Genghis Khan in that whole and even the way that he organized his military. Like I remember I read there's an author, and honestly it's kind of funny. I guess I should also say I love historical fiction, so it just kind of feeds into it. But there's a great author who wrote a series about Genghis Khan, and he was talking about the way that he lined up his troops to where if somebody fell, there was a person that could just come in, and that they were just, I mean, nearly impossible to beat. When they were at their height, they were, you couldn't beat them, kind of like the Romans, But it, and I feel too that the other thing that I really love about history is that it follows the same cycles. Like it got too big until it wasn't sustainable, and then it all fell apart. Same with the Roman Empire. It got so big that it was unsustainable, and then it was open for attack by the Goths, by the Visigoths, and then it all fell apart. And, when the Roman Empire fell, that's what, those of us in the Western culture or civilization called the Dark Ages, was the fall of
Mm-hmm.
the Roman Empire. I'm sure in Asia, they were like, whatever, we're, we're still here on the Silk Road. Don't mind us.
But you can see those traits repeating a little bit
Uh-huh.
sometimes too. And it's interesting that
Yeah.
once you've seen it in history and you see it again, you're like, oh,
Mhm.
well, I know how this one's going to end.
Well, and just kind of what ends up happening as a result, like think about everything that like France and England did to each other for centuries. And now they're allies.
Yeah.
Think about, even more recent history. I mean, that was, like World War I, World War II, they were on opposite ends. But, I think about, where America and Japan are now versus where we were 70 years ago.
Yeah. Which isn't
It,
that
it
long
just,
ago.
it's
Yeah.
not that long ago. I mean, there are fewer people alive now, but there are people alive that remember when Pearl Harbor was bombed, and that it was, I mean, just full on, you know, just that full on hatred and rage and collective trauma. But I feel like that the thing that I love about history, especially as an American, and watching shows like, I really love the show Yellowstone, and then I've watched the prequels 1883 and 1923, and thinking about an American too, just like the dreams and ambitions of our ancestors and what they endured to cross an ocean, come to a place that was completely unfamiliar to them because they had a dream for a better life, and everything that they said goodbye to and sacrificed so that, you know, we could be here, I mean, even like, Washington State, like
Yeah.
think about what, what I don't know the history of Washington very well, but I mean, that was like probably the end of the earth to a lot of people.
We were even talking about that just when I was in Canada. We were in the Canadian Rockies. And I was like
Mm.
mildly inconvenienced because the wind was kind of chilly off this glacier. And I was like, should have brought a beanie. That's on me. And then I was like, oh man, the indigenous people lived here with like
Mhm.
out this battery charged jacket that, I'm complaining about and had to like find their way like over these mountains and in these mountains, like regardless of the weather. And they didn't have all these conveniences. And how did they know like where to stop and where to go and which way to go and all of these things? And you just think about, like you said, those inconveniences that for us are just like, oh, well, it's a little chilly. I don't think I'll do that today, but they're out there just like forging through and like building these civilizations that lasted and would have lasted forever. It's
Yeah.
incredible to think. I think I was definitely born in the right time for me. I
Yes.
don't
Ditto.
know how tough I am. I am adventurous, but I don't know if I'm like tough. So, mad respect to all of the pioneers.
I know, I know. And I still want to know, like, like with igloos, like who thought to stack up bricks of ice to
Yeah.
build a dwelling?
Yeah. Well,
Like,
who ate a crab
who
for the
thought
first
of that?
time? Like, who broke
Right.
open that thing knowing there would be like this delicious meat on the inside? Like, that is hard work. Like, you had to be
Yeah.
really hungry. Like, who does these
Mm.
things?
Or lobster. Holy crap. I remember trying to eat a lobster by myself for the first time, and I was like, this is really hard.
It's so hard for like
It's
a
so
little bit
hard.
of reward, really. Like, it's not that much meat.
Exactly. It's more about butter. I've figured out that eating lobster is more about eating butter.
I love this. Well, I could talk history and travel all day, but thank you for sharing
Oh,
your tips with us. Any final words? We want women to go, right? To go far. That's our whole thing.
mm,
So, what would your kind
yes.
of like final words to someone? You want them to get out and explore history, give them a little pep
Yes.
talk.
That the world is vast, and that really the world is welcoming and it's very safe. And I think that as long as you are, you know, it's kind of like your mom said, nothing good happens after midnight. As long as you're back in your hotel room by midnight, you should be okay. But I don't think that women should let anything stop them from traveling, from, not even, you know, you can make a road trip and still go see someplace fascinating and fantastic that will rock your world, like the Grand Canyon, like the Redwoods, like Yosemite, like Yellowstone. Or you can get a passport and fly over a big ocean. But there's history everywhere. And just because it's not a UNESCO World Heritage Site doesn't mean that there isn't something that can be learned from every single destination.
Love that so much. So, where can people find you? We want to follow along with your adventures and dig deeper into the history of these places. Where can people find you?
I have a website, thenerdtraveler.com. That's also my Instagram handle, The Nerd Traveler. I also have a YouTube channel and TikTok, all The Nerd Traveler. And I also, as a kind of random aside, with as much travel as I like doing, I am very much try to be team carry on only. Just because trying to lift suitcases and navigate public transportation and all that good stuff. So, if people are trying to find ways to travel carry on only, I do have something on my website that helps us ladies with our toiletry bag, like thinking about things that are in a liquid state that also have an option as a solid, so that you can help empty out your liquids bag and maybe fill it with other things.
Oh my gosh, cool. Okay, I got to get my hands on that. So I'll drop
Yeah.
all those links in the description so everyone can
Thank
go and
you.
find them and follow along. Thanks for hanging out with me today. That was so much fun.
Oh my gosh, it was so much fun. Yeah, we could do this for like the rest of the day.
No, I know. I'm like geeking out. I'm like, I got to go look up this list and see where else we could go now.
Hey, let me know if you want my spreadsheet, girl.
Oh my gosh, heck yeah. All right, Audrey, talk to you soon.
All right, take care.